fellow Americans, it is me, Barack Obama. So this guy called Shari5 made a video about the current state of the video game industry. That's all you need to know, so in the famous words of Mario, let's go.
We're Costco guys. Of course we go shopping while eating a chicken bake.
There's usually a few games people would get for Christmas. The newest Call of Duty, yearly sports games, and then around 1 to 4 other games people would also get. Of course, times have changed, and now most gamers would want digital points for the Fortnite store or any game that has a microtransaction center.
But I thought no one liked microtransactions. What the fuck? When was this?
And then you have the evergreen title games such as Minecraft and Grand Theft Auto. And because of the system that capitalism puts on a gamer, they can easily get bored. Although this isn't every gamer, personally I invest in other games, and love have played a major role in this. The yearly releases and the games that dominate the market are losing their touch. Call of Duty and Madden are now fatigued, and consumers are deciding to try new games. Leave the company as an example. Some invest in single-player games, but most would follow what their friends are playing, with free-to-play live service games with Fortnite, Apex Legends, and Valorant being the dominant one. And because of people just following trends, they're not having much as fun as they used to. Of course, we can ask them to try playing an indie game or try a genre they never played before like an RPG. But here's a few things about this. The standard of living costs money, and people don't have the resources to buy any game they please. Some may have it easy, but most are trying to meet ends meet, and they can only afford to play with what they have.
You know, I actually agree with this statement. We can't just buy a game that commits nothing. Games can get expensive, and you might not have the time to play the next big indie game, especially when you consider the inflation going on in America and how much the middle class just takes L after L. Also, don't worry guys, we'll get more deep into this. I swear I have something to debunk.
And while the classics are usually good, they can get exhausting if you overplay them. And how people spend is on an individual status, and some may only pay and play certain games, and that's okay. People can make decisions based on what is popular or if they're interested. But the biggest takeaway from the segment is the economics of it, and with a good chunk of the population wanting to follow trends, it can easily get bored. Maybe word of mouth of lesser known games that don't cost much without microtransactions may help the industry and bring more competition than ever before.
You know, I agree as well. It can get tedious and repetitive to constantly play the same games, so you buy some new games to keep yourself entertained. Don't worry, y'all. I will make an argument, I swear to.
However, the lack of innovation in major studios is also something to take a look at. I've mentioned that gaming is a business, so instead of doing something unique, why not play it safe and do something that will make the money? Many folks who have a voice have noticed this, because without innovation or build quality products, people assume the AAA market is a monopoly. For example, EA bought the rights to have the NFL license in their Madden games, and only EA can sell them. Because of this monopoly, they have no desire to compete or to build a better product and rely on people buying it every August and spend money on their player cards. The series has no personality, and it is the product of what a corporate video game would look like. And on top of the overworked developers, you and I could probably agree that this sucks and needs to change. But why? Is making money the intended goal? Of course! Madden is making billions and have no desire to step up their game. And with no competition for the NFL license, they can control the market. And the only way we could stop this is just not buy the product and watch the games instead. Or better yet,
I mean, yeah, many video game companies rely on the same formula and overwork their developers. Now, the best solution would be emulating. No, literally, this is the best option. It's free. All you need is to download some software or app like PPSSPP,
Where you can emulate a console.
download some games from sites like CD Romance and Vimslade. Boom, play some games. Hell, this is an easy solution. If you get bored, just get an emulator. You don't need to heavily rely on money to just buy a game when we have emulation.
or better yet, play something else. I keep hearing about the Steam sales and people constantly talking about having a backlog of content to play because of their spending habits. I don't use Steam. The only computer games I usually would play are the Roller Coaster Tycoons and the Zoo Tycoon games back in the 2000s. I've always played on consoles, and the games are usually on Nintendo Switch and on PlayStation 4/5. And I don't buy a ton of games, and I only get them if I really need them or when I'm feeling I'm running out of stuff to play. My backlog is small, and I organize it in a way that I prioritize small games and then prioritize the big one and only get a set amount until they're done.
Well, I don't know, get into PC gaming, dude. There's so many games to play on Steam that are only a couple of dollars or just free. And Steam has deals all the time. There's a summer deal that drops the price by a lot. Actually, since you mentioned the Switch, they have sales too. They sometimes let you try out a game for free and let you figure out if you want to buy it or not. And deals are their own section on the Switch eShop. It's how I was able to buy all the BioShock games on the Switch for just $10. Just wait till there's a sale or a deal and pick it up before it's too late. They last for like 20 days, which is an ample amount of time.
Whether I can beat it or can't, I will decide when it ends, and it's usually when the story is beaten. I mostly just play single single-player games, with online games being very rare for me. I'm usually alone, but there's something I found out after I play games for a certain amount of time.
You know, for a rant about the economic state of the video game industry, it's really funny how you talk about this and use footage from a Genshin ripoff, Natasha the Underworld Doctor type ass, Honkai Star Rail, which is a mobile game for free. Best choice of footage, man. Good job.
It becomes a job, not in terms of content creation. That's a different subject. Many games can pad out its playtime with a ton of side quests, and sometimes the gameplay can be pretty annoying. I usually play games once at a time, and focus on a game would get me burnt out since it feels like it's been taking forever to get through.
Well, at this point, I don't know what to tell you other than find something else to play if this is getting tedious and boring. Start replaying games you haven't played in a long time. Maybe emulate, maybe wait for sales, maybe do some research if the games have any side quests, or I don't know, especially when I know the Switch lets you re-download old games that you've previously deleted.
The game Alter Ryza, Ever Darkness and the Secret Hideout had an endgame that is a drag to get through. The game has a final boss fight, and usually this would end the game and give you the credits. But no, the main character is an alchemist who plays with matter with chemistry, and they implement this idea into the game with a mix of crafting and a skill tree, which I find to be interesting. But the game made this 65% of the game, and after you beat it, you would need to get items, and then it's time to grind again. I didn't get these wind shoes early on, so I need to make them, but it requires this item, and then this other item, and it makes the experience a drag as a result of making it a glorified fetch quest. It ends eventually, but this made my final opinion on the game more sour, and the entire franchise is like this.
Keep this in mind till the next interjection. We're gonna get into this a little bit.
This was just a recent example of how annoying or certain experiences becomes a job. The original Kingdom Hearts has an unfair segment in the final boss that made me have a mental breakdown. Final Fantasy 16 has main story quests that feel like side content. Sonic Frontiers has an open world where it's hard to navigate sometimes. I couldn't get the hype for Among Us, likely because I don't have other people to play with.
Among Us? Games that become a job to play. Among Us. First off, there's an option in Among Us to just play with random strangers in public lobbies. And second of all, there isn't an example of a game that can become a chore like the other games you mentioned. Ulterior Ryza gave you side quests and more time to grind. Final Fantasy 16 gave you more side quests to do, and Kingdom Hearts had a hard boss. Among Us doesn't fit as an example in this discussion. The only way it becomes a chore for you is if you don't have people to play with, which isn't a problem. But and Among Us isn't like some story game like Final Fantasy or Kingdom Hearts. It's an online game where you get one round and done. The only amount of grinding you're probably gonna do is getting costumes and nothing else. So this is just a bad example, man.
And The Last of Us is an innovative and it's just another third-person shooter franchise that relies on its story and premise to be sold.
And this is not a good example of this. The Last of Us isn't a game that will take forever with side quests or hard bosses, but just a game that you just find boring. Nothing tedious about the game or anything, you just find it boring and not really fun to play as. And finally, this point is going to be my transition to my final thoughts, so this video is probably going to get shorter to like 10 minutes, which I fucking hate. Anyways, Siri, how expensive is a PS5, PS4, and a Switch?
3 hours later.
Okay, so I don't believe you. When you say that these games are so expensive where you can buy a PS5, PS4, and a Switch, for the PS5, I see from $400 to $600. For the PS4, I see up from $150 to $230, and for the Switch, $250 to $300. Yeah, how are you going to rant about the economic state of the video game industry when you have spent over $1,000 of consoles? You have the money, you have the resources for other options like emulating PC gaming and consoles, but you say that it's a problem with the industry? Like, maybe you held on to enough money for a Switch, PS5, and a PS4, but the idea that it's too expensive is just, the industry doesn't revolve around consoles anymore. So like, don't complain about how expensive games are getting when you're simply just ignoring these options you yourself mentioned.